This is Hawaii. 12 million tourists a year, beaches, resorts, traffic, high-rise hotels stacked along the shore. And this is also Hawaii, but you will never set foot here. No hotels, no roads, no shops, no cell towers, no running water the way you know it. If you weren't born on this island, you are not allowed to land on it. Not for a week, not for an hour, not for any amount of money. One family has owned this entire island and, in a sense, almost everyone living on it, since 1864. They banned alcohol, they banned guns, they banned cigarettes, they even banned beards. There is no police force here because in more than a century, there was never a crime worth having one. Except once. In December of 1941, something fell out of the sky and shattered the peace of this island in a way no one could have imagined. This is Niʻihau, Hawaii's forbidden island, and its story is stranger than almost anything else on Earth. Niʻihau is the westernmost of the main Hawaiian islands. Around 70 square miles of dry grassland, red dirt, quiet beaches, and a single shallow lake. It sits just 17 miles off the coast of Kauai. On a clear day, tourists on Kauai can look out across the water and see it on the horizon, a low, hazy shape they will never be allowed to reach. Because almost no one outside of a few hundred people has ever seen Niʻihau up close, it may be the least visited place in the entire United States. Today, fewer than 90 people live here. The last official census counted just 84. There are no stores, no supermarkets, nowhere to buy food. Everything comes in by boat or barge from Kauai. There's no hospital, no pharmacy, no dentist. There's no police station, no jail, no courthouse. For most of the last 100 years, there was no electricity at all. People lit their homes with kerosene lamps long after the rest of America had forgotten what that was like. Only recently did a small number of solar panels arrive, powering a school and a few essentials. The people who live here hunt wild game, fish the reefs, gather what they need, and raise livestock, much the way their families did generations ago. Money is barely part of daily life. Residents don't pay rent. In return, they live by the island's rules and help keep its old world running. And then there's the thing that makes Niʻihau unlike anywhere else on the planet. The people of Niʻihau speak Hawaiian, not as a subject in school, not as a few words on a souvenir, as their first language, the language they think in, argue in, sing in, and raise their children in every single day. Across the rest of Hawaii, the Hawaiian language nearly disappeared. For decades, it was discouraged, even banned in schools, pushed aside by English until only a handful of fluent elders remained. Today, there are heroic efforts to bring it back, but everywhere else, it had to be revived. Everywhere except Niʻihau. Here, it never slipped. The dialect spoken on the island is considered the closest living version to the Hawaiian that was spoken before Western contact. Linguists regard it as a national treasure, a direct, unbroken thread to a world that has otherwise vanished. Children on Niʻihau grow up speaking Hawaiian at home and only learn English later, almost like a foreign language. It is, quite literally, the last stronghold of the native tongue of these islands. And there's something else these people are known for, something so small you could hold it in the palm of your hand, yet worth more than gold. Along the beaches of Niʻihau wash up tiny, delicate shells, some no bigger than a grain of rice. The women of the island collect them by hand, sometimes spending hours combing the sand for enough to work with. Then they sort them by size and color, pierce them, and string them into intricate necklaces called Niʻihau shell lei. It can take months, sometimes years, to complete a single fine piece. The finest can sell for thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars. They've been displayed in museums and given as gifts to royalty, and by Hawaiian law, a lei can only be called a genuine Niʻihau shell lei if the shells actually came from this one island, one of the only places on Earth where jewelry made from seashells is protected almost like a national trademark. For many families here, these shells are one of the few connections to the outside economy, a piece of Niʻihau that is allowed to leave, even though almost no one is allowed to arrive. So how did one island end up sealed off from the modern world like this? A living museum, frozen in time. For that, we have to go back to a single deal made more than a century and a half ago. In the 1860s, Hawaii was not part of the United States. It was its own kingdom, ruled by its own royalty, and at this time, by King Kamehameha V. Into this world arrived a Scottish widow named Elizabeth Sinclair, who had sailed halfway around the planet, from Scotland to New Zealand, and finally to Hawaii, looking for a place to settle and build a new life. The king was willing to sell her land. He offered her a stretch of swampy, mosquito-ridden shoreline on the island of Oahu. She looked at it and she turned it down. That land she rejected would one day become Waikiki, some of the most valuable, most photographed real estate on planet Earth, worth untold billions today. Instead, Elizabeth Sinclair wanted the quiet island to the west, Niʻihau. In 1864, she bought the entire island, every acre, every beach, every hill, from the Kingdom of Hawaii. The price? $10,000 in gold. An entire island for the cost of a modest house. But as the story has been passed down, the deal came with more than money. The king, it's said, asked her to look after the island and its Hawaiian people, to protect their language and their way of life from the changes sweeping across the rest of the kingdom. Whether it was a formal promise or simply an understanding, that idea, protect this place, keep it as it is, became the invisible law that has governed Niʻihau ever since. Elizabeth Sinclair's descendants took the family name Robinson, and for more than 150 years, they have done something almost no family in the modern world does. They refused to sell. As the rest of Hawaii was transformed, as Waikiki filled with skyscrapers, as tourism became a multi-billion-dollar industry, as land values exploded, Niʻihau stayed exactly as it was. The Robinsons turned down offer after offer. They kept the gates closed through world wars, through Hawaii becoming a US state, through decade after decade of change. In recent times, it has been controlled by two brothers, Keith and Bruce Robinson, who guard it with the same stubborn dedication as their great-great-grandmother. Running a private island is not cheap, and the family is not endlessly wealthy. To help cover costs, they've allowed a few carefully controlled activities over the years, limited helicopter tours that never contact the residents, and an agreement with the US Navy, which quietly uses part of the remote island for defense. But the core rule has never bent. The people and their world stay protected. Which brings us to the rules themselves, the strict code that governs daily life on the Forbidden Island. Life on Niʻihau runs on a code that has barely changed in a century. Alcohol is forbidden. Cigarettes are forbidden. Guns, for ordinary residents, are forbidden. Men are not permitted to grow beards or wear their hair long, and access to the island itself is the strictest rule of all. You may set foot on Niʻihau only if you are one of three things: a resident of the island, a member of the Robinson family, or a guest personally invited by them. That's it. No tourists wandering the beaches, no journalists poking around, no developers, no hotel chains, no film crews. For most of its modern history, not even a working phone line connecting it to the world. To an outsider, it can sound almost unbelievable, even harsh. A place where one family sets the rules for everyone, where the modern world is simply not allowed in. But here is the part that surprises people the most. it works. There is no crime for police to chase, no traffic accidents, no bars, no break-ins, no addiction crises, no violence. The community is tight, quiet, and, by many accounts, deeply content. People know their neighbors. Children roam safely. Life moves at the pace of the tides. For generations, nothing broke that peace. Not war overseas, not the chaos of the 20th century. Nothing reached across the water to disturb it until one afternoon, in the middle of the deadliest war in human history, it came crashing down from the sky. That morning, 100 miles to the east, Japanese aircraft were tearing Pearl Harbor apart. Battleships were burning. Thousands were dying. America was about to be pulled into the Second World War. But on Niʻihau, no one knew. The island had no radio linking it to the outside, no telephone, no news. The people going about their day had no idea their country had just been attacked, or that they were now, suddenly, part of a global war. High above them, one Japanese fighter plane, a Zero, was in serious trouble. Its pilot was a 21-year-old named Shigenori Nishikaichi. He had been part of the attack, and on his way out, his plane had taken a bullet through the fuel line. He was losing fuel fast, and he knew he could never make it back to his aircraft carrier. So he searched for anywhere to land, and below him, he saw Niʻihau, the island so isolated that its people didn't even know there was a war. He brought the Zero down hard in a field, crashing but surviving. A local man named Hawila Kaleohano was one of the first to reach him. Something about the pilot, his uniform, the plane felt wrong. Kaleohano couldn't have known about Pearl Harbor, but on instinct, he took the pilot's pistol and his papers before the stunned man could react and locked them away. And then, in true Hawaiian fashion, the islanders did something extraordinary. They treated the stranger as a guest. They fed him. They even threw him a welcome party. But the pilot was desperate. He needed those documents back, papers that could reveal details of the attack, and he found people willing to help him. A small number of the island's residents of Japanese descent who agreed to assist the airmen. Over the days that followed, the welcome turned into a nightmare. The pilot and his helpers got hold of weapons. They took hostages. They threatened to kill anyone who wouldn't return the papers. They set fire to a home. Gunshots, a sound this island had almost never heard, cracked across the quiet fields as the men searched for Kaleohano and the documents he had hidden. For a place that had never known violence, it was a terror. Families fled into the hills. Some rowed a small boat all the way to Kauai to raise the alarm. And then, one couple decided it had to end. Benehakaka Kanahele, known as Ben, and his wife had been taken by the pilot and forced to help search. Ben had had enough. He lunged at the pilot. The pilot fired. Ben was hit 3 times, in the chest, the hip, and the groin, and still he did not go down. Enraged, wounded, Ben seized the much smaller man, lifted him and, as the story has been told ever since, threw him against a stone wall, ending the fight for good. The pilot was dead. Moments later, one of the men who had helped him took his own life. The rest were arrested. 6 days. That's all it took for a war fought across an entire ocean to reach the most isolated island in Hawaii and turn its century of peace upside down. Ben Kanahele survived his wounds and was later decorated for his bravery. The Niʻihau incident became far more than a strange wartime footnote. The speed with which peaceful, trusted neighbors had turned to help an enemy pilot deeply unsettled American authorities. Some historians argue that this single event on this tiny, forgotten island fed the fear and suspicion that helped justify one of the most regretted decisions in American history, the internment of more than 100,000 Japanese Americans in the months that followed. One tiny island with fewer people than a city block, consequences that reached an entire nation. And through it all, the Robinson family did the one thing they had always done. They kept the gates closed. Through the rest of the war, through Hawaii becoming America's 50th state, through the tourism boom that turned the other islands into one of the most visited places on Earth, Niʻihau stayed exactly as it had always been. Still no paved roads, still no stores, still no crowds, no billboards, no hotels. Still Hawaiian, spoken the old way, at every kitchen table, a living, breathing museum of a Hawaii that no longer exists anywhere else in the world. Protected by a promise made over a century and a half ago, and a family that simply refused to let it change. But the future of the Forbidden Island is far from certain. The population keeps shrinking as young people leave for jobs and opportunities on Kauai and beyond. Keeping an entire island running is a growing burden for a single family. And there are always questions about what happens to a place like this when the current owners are gone, and whether anyone will keep guarding a promise made to a king who has been dead for over 150 years. For now, though, Niʻihau endures. 17 miles off the coast of a modern American paradise, there is an island living in another century. And unless you are born there or invited by the family that owns it, you will spend your whole life looking at it from across the water and never once be allowed to touch its shore.